Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Renovators, the business advisory show for real estate professionals. My name's Chanell and this is Rex.
How are you, Chanell?
Well, just like our last episode, Rex, would have aired 2 weeks ago, it's still the same day and it's still extremely hot. So our guests are well and truly in a literal hot seat today, Rex.
They are in a hot seat, but I think this guest can handle the hot seat. He started real estate when he was 6 years old, when he first put on his first suit and went to his first auction at 6 years old. From there, he's progressed. He built a real estate office with 5,500 properties under management, selling over 600 properties per year and having a staff of over 100. He sold that. Not many people have experience growing something to that big and selling it. He now has moved on to a franchise or head of Victoria role for Belle Real Estate. Would you like to welcome our guest?
You're doing such a good job, Rexy. Why don't you enter and continue
Anthony Webb, head of Victoria at Belle Real Estate. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Great. You're not too warm there, Anthony? It's all okay?
I'll be all right. We'll get there. We'll get to the answers nice and quick.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know how quick we're going to go because you've got so much experience that we obviously want to delve into. But let's start with you, Anthony. 6 years old, you put on your first suit and you went to an auction. Tell us all about that.
Well, I think being a second generation real estate agent, you look at your parents and you look at what they do and you say that that's what I want to do when I grow up. So I remember the day putting on my first suit. It had a professionals label on it, 6 years old. And I went with Dad for a Saturday of auctions. So I got paid a couple of bonuses that day. They were the first bonuses and that might have hooked me, but I got a bonus for standing really still. I got a bonus for ringing the bell really well, and I got a bonus if the property sold. So I think Dad had 4 auctions that day. I got $1.50 because each one sold. And in 1986, $6 was huge for 6 years old.
6 years old.
Most popular boy in the milk bar.
I was, and most eggs and lollies were a lot for you.
And then what happened from there? Tell us a little about the journey from obviously growing the business and then
Getting into business, because you don't go straight into real estate. You kind of...
I sort of did go straight into real estate. I mean, fast forward to when I turned 18 years old, school finished. I went away on schoolies. I went to a boarding school before that. So I had to borrow some money off Dad so I could go to schoolies and have a really good time. And then when I got back from schoolies, Dad came up to me and said, okay, come and work with me till Christmas, pay me back, and then you can do what you want to do. So I remember going, loving it. So this is back in the day where I was sort of what you call a cadet. So we were putting up boards, doing pointer boards, key safes, all sort of the rubbish jobs that no one else really wanted to do. And I remember we sort of got to Christmas and I remember quietly walking up to Dad being a little bit nervous and saying, oh, I had a really good time. Is it okay if I keep working for you? And I think secretly he was really happy. But oh yeah, sure, no, you have to keep working really hard. And I guess that's sort of something that's happened. So while I was doing that, I was also at university. So I started a marketing degree, which I didn't finish. I then went and did a Bachelor of Business in property. And when you get to industry-based learning, you go and work in an office and everyone kept pushing me towards residential valuations. I found that a little bit boring because I found I was just calling real estate agents up and asking what houses sold for. So I didn't end up finishing that degree, but I then went and did my full real estate agent's license and started working there. So I think while I was doing the Vals degree and while I was at university, even while I was doing IBL, I was still always working Saturdays for Dad in the business. And I went and did my full license and then started full time. I think it was about 2003 where I officially started full time.
So a long time ago.
It was, but I sort of started off in property management. So started off as a property management cadet, then being an assistant property manager, then a property manager. Then I went into BDM for a little bit, and then I went and travelled overseas, as a lot of people do. When I was about 24, 25 years old, I worked in real estate in the UK and in Ireland as well, before I came back and went into sales. So started as once again a sales cadet, then into a PA, and then stepped out on my own and then put on a PA, and then into management positions from there where I managed, the BDM team, managed a sales team, general manager, and effectively stepped
You've
up.
done every role in a real estate office you could think of.
I think I have. And I think that was probably one of the things why people on my team would respect me, because I'd done their job. I knew what it was like to sit in their position, so I could empathise and hopefully give them some guidance along the way. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because for me, it was a way that I got a really good grounding. I was never an academic, certainly not a lawyer, Rex. I couldn't get there.
You'd be a good lawyer.
Now I would, but
Yeah.
back then I wasn't. I think a lot of males probably don't. They go through a point where they figure out what they want to do. And for me, that probably happened while I was overseas when I was 24, 25. And when I sort of came back, I sort of really put my head down and did as much as I could, which was really cool.
How did you do it though? Not many people can grow a rent roll to 5,500, have a sales team that does 600 a year and a team of over 100. Can you
Let's
talk us?
start with the rent roll maybe, because we think we need to break this down. And I
It's
think-
too much.
Yeah,
It's a
so
lot.
growing a rent roll to 5,500, was that a combination of acquisitions, or was it predominantly organic growth?
So there definitely were a lot of acquisitions. So I think in talking to Dad, he did 21 throughout his career. I was probably involved in about 8 or 9.
He did 21.
Yeah, 21
One
acquisitions.
acquisitions.
And I
I'm
think,
involved in 9 of those acquisitions.
yeah,
Can you talk us, because not everyone's bought a rent roll, and it's a process to integrate into your system, integrate teams into your system. What's a good way of doing that?
I think it depends on the size of the rent roll a lot. I think we actually got to a point where people would come to us directly, so we weren't necessarily having to go through rent roll brokers because we'd done it for a long time. A lot of those situations, we're in a position where we could absorb those rent rolls. We didn't necessarily have to take on new property managers or do a whole lot in terms of system changes. In some of the big acquisitions we did, we're certainly bringing on 3, 4, 5 property managers and sort of doing the changeover as well. So I guess in terms of due diligence, it's really looking at the people that you're buying the business from. Really making sure that you're getting across the files and seeing where they're at. I mean, thank God in a lot of those acquisitions we didn't have the sort of compliance and legislation that we do now.
Yeah.
So when you're working through, what we found is when a lot of those landlords and now residential rental providers came and joined us, they were actually getting a better experience. So they were happy to come across. And that was probably one of the things that we found. Instead of going out necessarily and buying the best rent roll that was around, sometimes buying one that needed a little bit of work
Yeah.
was actually really good, because they came across and things that we just did, they never had or experienced before. So they were really happy with that.
Oh,
When purchasing or acquiring a rent roll, a lot of clients have trepidation around purchasing from a company that will continue operating in the area.
Yeah.
Did you purchase from companies or directors that then continue to operate after the sale?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And I guess for us, we, once again, really backed that we did property management well. I mean, property management wasn't just a byproduct of our sales team. Property management was something that we really focused on and spent a lot of time on. So we backed ourselves to give really good service and make sure that we did the right things by our clients. And then that's where you speak to a really good lawyer and make sure that there are the right restraints and those sorts of things that we'll put in there. If someone's still working in the area, there's always the chance that they're going to sell the property through that agent because they might have a relationship, whether it be family, friends, or those sorts of things. And as long as you're protected well enough in that acquisition, then you don't have too many issues. The problems we actually had was when there were really complicated legal documents. They were usually the ones when we had the most issues, because those people might not have acted as ethically as they probably should.
keeping it simple makes it the best way.
Yeah. And what about retaining talents, Anthony? I mean, to grow a rent roll of 5,500 requires a significant amount of property managers. How did you recruit and then retain? Because my understanding is you didn't have huge amounts of turnover in your rental division.
I think definitely towards the end we did. I think COVID was a really big change for the property management industry as a whole. We didn't lose that many though, in comparison to what I was hearing around the industry. And I think we were a family business. So while we're a big family business, we had genuine care for the people that were on our team. So for us, it was a lot of it was about growing our own talent. So they didn't know what it was like anywhere else. We tried to offer as much support as we possibly could. But that culture piece was huge. So we were really lucky to have some amazing heads of department. But like I said, it was something Dad and I really focused on. So we got involved and make sure that people really felt appreciated. And I think as long as people are growing and you're doing the right thing by them, and 9 times out of 10, I'd say we did. At the same time, we made sure that our systems were followed. So that we knew that our clients were getting a good experience with us. Some people didn't like that. Sometimes you have people come in and they thought that they could do it better, and maybe they could. But our systems were ones that we designed, in the end by over 50 years. So it was really important that we sort of followed that process as well. So we used to call it the Webb way.
I like that. And do you think, having worked in property management, and the reason I ask this question, a lot of real estate business owners are salespeople that have done exceptionally well and then gone and opened up a real estate office. They don't really understand the intricacies of their rental division. Do you think you, having worked in property management, really helped with the retention and growth because you understood the trials and tribulations that a property manager would go through day in, day out?
Yeah, definitely. And I think being involved, and I used to say to my team all the time that I was the worst property manager that ever existed.
Why?
When I was in property management, I was young, I wasn't organised, I didn't probably appreciate it as much as I do now. And so going in there and sort of, lowering the barriers, I certainly wasn't perfect, and we always wanted to get better. But also knowing what it's like to be dealing with a really difficult landlord or a really difficult tenant that can keep you awake at night, because I experienced that. So we would back our property managers to the hilt. And like I said, with our systems and processes, as long as they followed them, we had evidence and knew that they were doing the right thing. And like I said, we'd back them. So if we had a really difficult landlord, we'd sort of go, okay, see you later. We don't need to deal with you anymore.
Yeah.
Can we shift into sales?
Yeah.
Because you didn't just grow a monster property management department. You had a monster sales business as well, and an amazing culture in your sales business as well. And you grew some amazing talent from that sales business as well. How did you start that?
I think this really gets back to Dad and the culture that he drove in the business even before I arrived. So, it was once again growing those people, giving them the opportunities, making sure that we had the best available training, we had the best available administration team, receptionists, systems. If there was a new technology that we thought would help, we'd try it. If salespeople came to us with ideas, we'd implement it. And I think
sounds like you're very responsive to culture change.
Yeah. And I think I definitely was. I mean, Dad was very, this is the direction we're going in, and we're going to do it. And that was why he was so successful. And when I guess I came and joined the business, I needed to be a little bit different. Certainly I couldn't be Dad. I didn't want to be Dad. But I sort of had to play the part where, and I think culture was changing. You can't be a 1980s footy coach, for instance, in the 2000s and 2010 and even now. So times have changed a little bit. So you do need to collaborate. And, especially towards the end, I wasn't on the ground listing and selling every single day. I was still doing auctions, but I needed to take advice from what people were hearing in the lounge room and what they were coming up against, and we needed to tinker and change accordingly.
Can we touch on that piece? Like, family business, starting for Dad at 6 years old. Dad was the name of the business, I suppose, at the time too. It was the Philip Webb business. But how is that, transitioning, taking over the reins and running the...
And also, did you feel like you were in your dad's shadow? Or people sort of, painted that cast over you, like Anthony's, only successful because of his father? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that was, I think, probably one of the things I found hardest in my real estate career, because Dad, in my mind, he's one of the greatest real estate agents Australia's ever seen. You can argue that to the cows come home. I think I can argue pretty successfully, but he did cast a big shadow. And I think I found that difficult, particularly early, because if I was good, it was because Dad was helping me. And if I was crap, it was because I was crap.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the things in our family, the word determination keeps coming up. And for me, I really had to get to a point where I went, you know what, I don't care what other people can say. I need to put my head down and just keep doing, just keep doing. And that's ultimately what I did. So in the end, I don't really care externally what people think of me. I know what I can do. My team certainly knew what I could bring to the table. My team now knows what I can bring to the table. And that's probably the most important for me.
Most certainly. I really want to talk about your transition to becoming CEO of Belle Property, but we can't until, bear with me, we can't until we talk about the sale of Philip Webb. Yeah. What led to that decision ultimately to sell such a monstrous business, but also a family business?
Yeah, I think it was a real challenge, and I think it was a really difficult decision for Dad and for me as well. I think we'd got to a point where I think Dad had exhausted so much energy and mental energy in growing this business, which he was so attached to. It was his identity. He came to me one day and said, "Oh, well, I think I'm done. I think I want to get out." And I couldn't borrow the money to buy it. It was a massive acquisition. Even if we broke off parts of the business, Dad would probably still be financially involved. And for me, the whole idea of this exit was to give Dad the opportunity to take advantage of everything that he'd worked so hard and sacrificed for so long. But as long as he was financially attached, he was never going to remove himself from the business. So it was that balance. So ultimately, I think, it was a great opportunity for him to be able to get out and exit. And for me, it was a great opportunity to go and see what else was out there. But there were lots of conversations and, lots of scotch drank while having these conversations. And ultimately, once it all happened, I think it takes a while, but there's a sigh of relief that something's happened. But, I think also for him, he's been so proud of his name and the name that he built up over the years that I think he was happy to see it sort of go out on top, which was really cool. So I guess getting back to your question, how the sale happened, we sort of then went and made some approaches to people we knew within the industry who could connect those sorts of things happen. Ultimately, we sat down with our lawyer who we'd been working with for a long time. He was able to go and, we did an IM and all those sorts of things and went out to a few people. It's funny, just like at work, sometimes you fall in love with the person that's sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
It was one of the closest officers to us that was really interested.
I think it's competitive probably for a long time.
Yeah, they were. And, it was Barry Clayton Manningham and Dad and Barry competed all through the 80s and 90s. And, certainly Spiro has done an amazing job with what he's been able to achieve out in Manningham too. So it actually collaborated. Our first conversation was actually at a conference. And we sort of, I think the lawyer had been speaking and we'd been in between, but we just happened to be at a conference at the same time. We went off site, had a bit of a drink, had a conversation, got to know each other a little bit better. And the reality is then it happened unbelievably quickly. So
really,
yeah.
I would have thought it would have been such a drawn out process. This is interesting.
So it was probably, Dad and I had the conversation in May. We probably digested it over a month and went and spoke to the lawyers around June. But it was probably July by the time we had the IM taking place. We hadn't really gone out too hard, but it was September when we had a conversation and we settled in November. So it happened unbelievably quick.
It shows that you're very well organized because, most people are preparing for a
But
sale.
due diligence on the rent roll alone.
But that's what it means.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to be
very
organized.
clean,
Yeah.
But I think we also had a reputation for such a long time of doing the right thing. And I'm running probably one of, if not the best property management businesses in Australia. So, I don't think it was a hard decision for them because they knew that we were doing things right. They certainly did their due diligence and came and looked at files and we looked at numbers and those sorts of things. But I think, for them, there was a lot of trust and, I think it was a big, massive move for them to go out and make that acquisition. And so, we were really open to it as well.
Was it emotional?
Yeah, it was. I sort of still remember standing up and telling our team and, Dad was there as well and you could hear a pin drop.
Oh.
And there were emotions. I think it's funny sometimes when you look at change and even change in business as being a clock. We're at 11:59 in that change management process where everyone else was at 1 minute past 12.
Yeah.
So we'd been full the through process, but they were just taking their first step. So it was pretty rocky and, pretty much for the next couple of months, I just sort of spent as much time as I could with the team, letting them know that everything was going to be okay and working through the process. Some people moved on really quickly. Some people, I still speak to a lot of our old team quite regularly, which is really nice and good.
And now the transition.
Yep.
Head of Victoria at Belle Property.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Even before that, Rexy, can I just say, Anthony, to have a CEO running one of Australia's most successful franchise groups, and we know a lot of CEOs, but to have this kind of experience where you've built and sold I believe they're now one of the largest real estate offices in the Southern Hemisphere. I can't even imagine the amount of skills and wisdom that you could now give to Belle and individual offices because you've been there, you've done it all. Like that's such a valuable CEO within a franchise group as opposed to potentially someone that hasn't really worked in the industry, you know.
Or had one office or whatever, a small office. A lot of other CEOs don't have.
I think to lead an entire franchise group with the experience that you've had, I mean, this is not a question, this is me probably tooting your horn a little bit more, but that's absolutely phenomenal and such a huge win for Belle Property.
I'd like to think so. I mean, I think for me, it was a really good decision. And so I guess, you know, we have an amazing structure at Belle Property, and, you know, we've got a CEO being Peter Hanscom and Nick Boyd in various forms. And so for my role, I can really get involved and work with the businesses. So there are some businesses where, you know, some days I can be working on a property management restructure. The next day it might be, you know, talking about scripts and dialogues, or we might be doing some work on vendor management or looking at P&Ls or some marketing plans. So the way I describe my role to people is really, I look at myself as being a consultant to and it is Hocking Stuart as well. So Belle and Hocking Stuart in Victoria and Tasmania. And really looking at each person one by one. I guess initially coming across, you've got to prove yourself again.
Of course.
And so I really just, you know, look at each office one by one, and some offices don't need help. They're running really well, so you let them go.
Yeah.
Whereas some offices do need your help, and, you know, some I'm speaking to every second day, every single week, and working with them as much as possible. But I look at myself as being a resource for them to use. And also if we can see some things that are happening, just being there, sometimes for support, sometimes giving them a pat on the back. And you know, sometimes it's even just dropping everything and going and helping them at an auction on a Saturday if they need an extra body.
And what Belle does different to some other national franchises, like some other named national franchises have a national CEO and then Victoria's CEO or New South Wales. Belle doesn't do this. You've got a national CEO and you're effectively like the Victorian CEO, but they call you head of Victoria.
Yeah.
What's the difference? I mean, it sounds like you're doing a CEO role of Victoria, but not as...
Oh, do you know what? I think titles are a really easy way to make someone feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
I sort of, that's never been a big thing for me. So in terms of what's the difference, I don't know. I haven't worked in another franchise group. I don't know what that means. I just know, you know, I'm really lucky that Nick and Peter back me. And so 9 times out of 10, I get to do what I feel is the right thing at the time. And there's certainly a lot of things at the moment that I've never dealt with before. So they're there as a resource that I can pick up the phone and speak to them as I need to.
Things that you haven't dealt with before?
Well,
I find that hard to believe.
I think there's certainly franchising things, and legal things that perhaps I haven't dealt with before. You know, there's still HR things that come up, and you know, even just some difficult things in terms of purchases and sales and property management things I haven't dealt with before. But a lot of it does come down to the franchise side of things that I haven't dealt with before. So
how have you found the transition from one owner, family office to a franchise system now?
It's been really good. I guess I was brainwashed as an independent real estate agent, and I guess stepping across to the dark side, so to speak, or now the light side, because that's where I'm sitting, I'm really enjoying it. So I can honestly talk about what I think are the pros and cons of both systems.
What is the pros? So you've seen both from the largest levels, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, and probably what took its toll on me and Dad most was in an independent business, everything's on you.
Yeah.
So, you know, the support, I guess, you know, you've got to go out and do everything yourself, whether it be marketing, whether it be technology. You know, you've got to be across so many different things, finance, as long as being good at sales and property management and doing all those sorts of things. So the stress is really there. So that's great. If you've got the mental fortitude and the determination and that's what you want to do, great. Go do it. That was certainly how we were. I guess stepping across the franchise group now, I think if I was to go and open up a new real estate agency, I can certainly see the benefits, and it's something I'll probably do if I were to do that. Open a franchise, particularly with Belle. Like I said, I don't know others, and Hocking Stuart, but the support that's given. So whether it be property management support, you know, which, yes, you're paying a franchise fee, but I know a lot of my offices are getting more value than what they're paying a franchise fee. You know, the compliance support, it's becoming such a massive part of what we do. We're lucky that we've got an amazing compliance person. Operations, from, you know, having someone who can help you with your CRM and making sure that your systems and processes are really on point and tight, through to marketing as well. So all these things are at your fingertips. And probably the thing I see the most is people not using us and using the resources enough. But I think from a standing start, or even just from the fact that you know, sometimes you'd be sitting there. And I was lucky I had Dad. So he actually lives in the next street to me. So I could go around with a wine or something like that and we could sit down and have a chat. But a lot of people don't have that. So
Yeah.
you can feel really isolated and alone. Whereas, you know, a lot of our franchisees they're amazing friends. And, you know, we've got a great culture within our franchise group as well, which I was really surprised with. But then they can pick up the phone and call me, or they can call Nick, or they can call Peter as well. And that's the relationships that's there. So I think that they're probably the biggest things. And I think also, you know, if I was to go open Anthony Webb Real Estate in the area where no one knew me, you know, you've got to build that brand and reputation again. Whereas if you're going in with a Hocking Stuart brand or a Belle brand within
And the cost of building a brand too, like websites and
Marketing,
branding and logos.
You know, templating, all that sort of stuff.
Even recruiting, they want to be in a franchise group. It's more attractive. So, you know, growing teams and, you know, it's more difficult. What does Belle look for, particularly Belle look for in a franchisee?
I mean, clearly we want someone that's performing, but most important, they need to be a good person.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really important to make sure that the people that are coming on board align with our brand and our values and sort of can see the benefits of us and the direction that we want to go. You know, we do, you know, and I know it's quite cliche, but there's a lot of people that we reject in terms of we don't, you know, real estate's a really small industry. We all know what's happening. We were having a conversation about that before. There's a lot of gossip, rumor, innuendo, but there's also a lot of fact. You know the people that are doing the wrong thing. And so we really work to make sure that we have the right people come and join us and do as much due diligence as we can.
So you're looking at quality over quantity, because I'm seeing a lot of this at the moment in my role, I'm sure Rex is as well, where particular groups are just trying to acquire as many business owners and opening up as many offices as possible. Belle doesn't really do that. They tend to be a little bit more selective.
No, definitely. And I think one of the things that we talk about with our team in orientation is we talk about the fact that we don't want 1,000 offices. I mean, it'd be nice, but we one of the mantras that we have running through our business is fewer, better people. So it really comes back to, you know, if we can have fewer of the right people on the bus, we'll actually get there faster.
So true.
And you can see that with, you know, particularly what's happening in Melbourne at the moment. We're starting to get some really good traction. If you look at some of the other states where we've opened, we've got some amazing performers. And I also like the fact that we fly under the radar a little bit as well, because we're not out there for the massive promotion. We're not, you know, beating our chests and telling everyone how great we are all the time.
But he's still a household name.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the future of Belle looking like?
I think we definitely want to grow.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's opportunities certainly in Melbourne and across Australia at the moment for Belle offices. You know, we've also got the brand of Hocking Stuart, which I see as a really cool way to grow as well. And
How are you growing both of them? How do you grow two brands in the same franchise system?
Yeah, I think those brands will never compete against each other. And sort of the brands are different for different locations.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the easiest way to explain it is, you know, Belle does tend to be that boutique premium brand. And there's perhaps a different strategy that we run through those because there are high commissions that are sitting there. Hocking Stuart is a really innovative place where we can go and really sort of push the needle a little bit. And you can sort of see that as a sort of, once again, a premium brand, but in those higher volume, lower value sort of areas.
Fantastic. I'm excited to see where the future of both brands go.
I do. Same. I'm excited to see how you go with it too. It sounds like you're doing some amazing
How long
things
have you been there for so far?
I've been there 18 months.
Wow.
So it's been a short journey so far compared to the 26 with Dad before. But I'm really enjoying it. And
you've done some great stuff, and you've recruited some great officers so far as well. I've had the privilege of working with some of the officers. Just good people, really good people.
And that gets back to, you know, really looking for the right people in the right locations.
Well, a wealth of knowledge and an incredible journey in real estate. And now we're excited to be and watch what the next 18 months looks like for you and for Belle and Hocking Stuart. So thank you so much, Anthony, for sharing this journey with us. We're super excited to see where the future of both brands.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode of Real Estate Renovators.